Good morning, everyone. As Tony said before Mass, around this time each year we make our annual Catholic Appeal. The Catholic Appeal is sort of the big collection that takes place once a year to support the work of the Archdiocese, the central ministries. But more than that, I'd like us to think about the Catholic Appeal as being a way that we support other parish families. It's true, by giving to the Catholic Appeal, our parish does get a lot back, especially for the services that I and our team rely on from the Archdiocese. But I think it's also good for us to think about, by giving to this appeal, we are able to share so much of the good things that we have here with other parish families. And I think ours is the best, but we want to help them too. So you can give by, if you want to give the old-fashioned way, there are these blue envelopes in the back of the church by the doors, or as Tony said, you can give online at bostoncatholicappeal.org. Thank you to everyone who's already given, who's given in the past, and thank you to everyone who will give this year along with me. As we continue our Lenten journey, we're now in the third week of Lent, and we're moving along. There's a parable, you may have heard it before. The parable is about an eagle's egg. Now, there's an eagle's egg that's in a nest up on a high cliff, but somehow the eagle's egg fell out of its nest, and somehow, without cracking, it landed among other eggs in the nest of a chicken. And it happened that all of the eggs there happened to hatch all together, and the little eagle grew up right alongside the other chickens. But it didn't notice that it was any different. In fact, that eagle thought it was a chicken, so it would peck at the ground, it would scratch at the ground, and it lived its life as a chicken. That is until one day. One day, up above in the sky, there was another eagle flying way up overhead, and he spotted his young confrere there down on the ground. So he swooped down to go visit him, and he said to him, "What are you doing? What's the matter with you? Don't you know who you are? You are a great eagle, yet you're here acting like a chicken." No offense to chickens. And then it taught the little eagle how to stretch its great wings, and it taught it how to fly so that eventually it could soar. I tell you the story because in a certain way, we are that eagle. Each of us is marred by original sin, that defect in our nature which is inherited, which is the source of all of our unhappiness and all of our brokenness. But by God's grace, or rather our cooperation with God's grace, we can rise above all of our brokenness, and like that little eagle, we can learn to soar. People read all sorts of books and blogs and podcasts and articles that aim to tell us what we need to do to sleep better, to be more fulfilled at work, at home, or to have more money. We read these sorts of things because we want to have a better life. But the primordial guide to living can't be found in the internet or in a magazine. Rather, the primordial guide was given to us by God Himself, and we heard it in the first reading. The 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments are not some sort of antiquated limits on our freedom that keep us from doing the things that we want to do. Rather, the 10 Commandments are the guide, the sure guide that leads us to a better life. And we might think, well, how can that be true? There's only 10 of them. Well, each of the 10 Commandments we can think of as being a sort of umbrella, because each of the commandments sort of covers a great territory that governs all of our relationships, that we need to be happy with God, with our family, with others, and since all sin obviously hurts ourselves, with ourselves. Think of this as a parent. You want your children to be happy and healthy and successful. But, left to their own devices, they might eat chocolate instead of broccoli. They might play video games instead of reading. They might even stay up way too late. Things that will not help them flourish or, to use the image of the parable, help them soar. In the long run, if they do these things, they'll be cranky, disobedient, and lack the skills that are necessary for self-sufficiency. And if we think of ourselves as adults, well, the same thing is true about us too. How often do we idolize money or gossip or appearance or prestige or pleasure or anything else over the relationships that are important to us? You see, when we do this, we're sort of acting like the chicken who pecks and scratches at the ground as opposed to soaring in the sky like the eagles that we're made to be. When we make God the center of our lives, when we love Him above all things, when we find our meaning in serving Him alone, then we can be truly free and become everything we were created to be. Today's gospel begins with Jesus arriving in Jerusalem for the Jewish feast of Passover. In the temple area, Jesus finds, we read, those who sold oxen, sheep, and doves, as well as the money changers. All of the animals were there because they were going to be used in ritual sacrifice. And at the time, most of the currency had on it the images of pagan rulers, so it was considered unclean. And so they needed the money changers to exchange it for money that was acceptable for temple use. But the temple authorities would have gotten a cut of the action, so to speak. And so, when the obvious abuses crept in of taking advantage of poor pilgrims, they didn't do anything. And as we read on, we then have what is, I really think, one of the most striking scenes in the entire New Testament. We read, Jesus made a whip out of cords and drove them all out of the temple area with the sheep and the oxen, and spilled the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. As an aside, one of my priest friends posted a meme on Facebook last night, and the image was the cleansing of the temple, and the caption was, next time someone asks you what Jesus might do, remind them that flipping tables is in the realm of the possible. Okay, I'm sorry. In our gospel today, we get a rare glimpse of Jesus' righteous anger. Again, he's not angry because pilgrims were purchasing animals for sacrifice so that they could offer worship to God, but rather because God's house had been changed into something it wasn't. A marketplace for profit where people were being taken advantage of. For us here today, Lent is a special and a sacred time for the purifying of our hearts. And if we remember, this pandemic started a year ago, before that, but we've been in the lockdown mentality for about a year now. And in that time, maybe some things have crept into the temple of our hearts. So it's a good time to consider. Has your heart, become a marketplace filled with things that don't belong? Rash judgment, self-centeredness, envy, or anything else? Have you lost sight of the greatness that you're both called to and capable of? Saint Irenaeus once said that the glory of God is a man fully alive. So we're not meant to live like chickens who are really eagles. Rather, we are meant to soar as God's beloved daughters and sons. And most of what keeps us down, it isn't out there in the world or in the news or in the media or anything else. Most of what keeps us down is in here, our heads, and in here, our hearts. Things that clutter our soul and enslave us to cycles of resentment and unhappiness. In the sacrament of reconciliation, we approach Jesus in repentance, and we are cleansed again of this debris that weighs us down and comes between our relationship with God and with others. The things that weaken our ability to live out the commandments of love. So, today at Fatima at 3 p.m., we're going to have a number of priests available to celebrate the sacrament of reconciliation with you. If it's been a long time, don't worry. As a help, we've got these guides available in the back of the church, which could be a guide to help you make a good confession. But also, they have some questions on the back side that are based on the 10 Commandments that might help you examine your heart. For those of you that are joining us online, you can find them right on our website. As we continue our Lenten journey, let us consider this. What do our hearts need to be cleansed of now?